Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
The FBI is looking into whether foreign governments, organizations, or individuals helped fund the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Among other leads, agents are investigating a $500,000 Bitcoin payment. It was apparently made by a French national to key figures and groups in the alt-right before the attack. On top of that, federal and D.C. area police agencies have noticed that since the riot, Russian, Iranian, and Chinese influence actors have, quote, seized the opportunity to amplify narratives in furtherance of their policy interests amid the presidential transition, unquote. Joining us now is NBC national security correspondent Ken Dilanian. He broke the story this evening. Ken, tell us more about this FBI investigation. It sounds like, and I'm breaking this all the way down, I know I'm way oversimplifying this, but it sounds like there may be foreign money behind the attack on the Capitol, at least in part, to further much larger aims than just what these insurrectionists may have wanted, that this has become a geopolitical matter. Is that overstating it, or is that kind of it?
No, I think that's certainly what the FBI is investigating. First of all, they're looking at this $500,000 in Bitcoin transfers that appear to have been made by a French computer programmer who seems to have committed suicide, and this was like his last act. And while that may have seemed like it could be potentially a front for a foreign intelligence operation, people have looked at that and say, no, in fact, I think that really was a French computer programmer, but that's a lot of money that went to some significant alt-right figures on December 8th, so a few weeks before the protest. But it's larger than that, because the FBI, look, there's a long history of the Russian government making common cause with far-right and far-left extremists in the United States. And the FBI is looking to see whether there was any of that here, Russia or even other adversaries, whether there was any recruitment of these people, whether there was any funding. Because, look, looking at what the Russian government and the Chinese government are doing now on social media, they are trying to seize this episode and use it to their advantage and try to denigrate the United States and feed their narratives. And so the FBI is looking at whether they had anything to do with sort of motivating people. Look, it's clear this was a domestic movement, mostly a United States phenomenon, but there may have been foreign influences, and if there were, that might be a crime, Joshua.
In your reporting, you note how white supremacist movements in the West and the Russian government have long been believed to have this kind of affinity between them. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, there are, the FBI has seen evidence for years, I am told, of attempts by Russian intelligence officers to infiltrate these groups, to be in their chat rooms, to recruit them. Some have even gone, some Americans and Westerners have gone to Ukraine for some kinds of training. And so there's a symbiosis here. And we even saw the Russians seeking to infiltrate the National Rifle Association, not a white supremacist group, but a right-wing Republican-oriented group. And so the question is, and that's some of that is not illegal, but if the Russians funded people who are intending on an insurrection and breaking the law, there are a lot of potential criminal charges. And also, it's a counterintelligence issue. And that's why the FBI's counterintelligence division is part of this investigation, Joshua.
Let me put a few viewer questions to you, one having to do with the security situation here in the district. There are red zones and green zones that have been set up around the Capitol and the National Mall to kind of delineate where people can and cannot go in and out. You can see there on the screen kind of the area around the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the Capitol up to the White House. There's a security barrier blocks and blocks away from that. Carolyn asked on Twitter, do you think the fences, walls, and barriers are going to stay up in D.C. permanently? So sad for our capital city. Ken?
I don't think so, Joshua. These barriers are designed to address a mass gathering of people and a potential mass demonstration. They are not needed to protect the Capitol on a day-to-day basis. We may see more fencing, more security based on what happened January 6th, which should never happen again, the infiltration of the U.S. Capitol. But what we're seeing now is about as militarized as Washington, D.C. has been, some people say, since the Civil War. Not even during World War II or after 9/11 were there this many armed troops and barriers and vehicles and streets blocked off. So that's not really sustainable, and I don't think we're going to see that going forward.
Yeah, living in D.C., you get used to seeing various kinds of security presences, including for the inauguration, but not like this. One more quick question from Twitter. A viewer asked, why have we not heard a peep from the DNI, from the Director of National Intelligence? Wouldn't he be involved in protecting our capital from a terrorist attack? Where is DNI Ratcliffe? Ken, before we go?
I think that's a fair question. Ratcliffe issued a press release welcoming Space Force into the intelligence community, but he hasn't said a word about these riots. And while, if you talk to people over there, they would say, look, we're mainly a foreign intelligence operation, foreign facing. The DNI includes the FBI and the National Counterterrorism Center, which grapples with these issues of domestic terrorism. There was clearly a potential intelligence failure here, and the Director of National Intelligence has not said one word about this, Joshua.
NBC National Security Correspondent Ken Delanian, we appreciate the reporting. Thanks very much.
It is Monday, the 18th of January of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's Martin Luther King Day. A lot happened over the weekend, of course, as it always has, for at least the last 4 years, and I am really looking forward to weekends as being days of rest once again. I really do hope that Joe introduces an executive order to make that so. He's going to be pretty busy starting on day one. It looks like he's going to, overturn the XL pipeline. Well, good. It's about time. Among other things. And yes, I hope also that people keep an eye on Trump when he leaves, because he's going to hijack the jet. Don't let him hijack that jet, okay? Please. I'm convinced that that's what he's going to do. Other things that I have a bit of concern about, the National Guard are being vetted, and I would have hoped that they had vetted them before they became National Guardsmen, but that's just me. So 25 to 27,000 troops, and the FBI has to vet every single one. Well, I would start with their tats. Any untoward tats, and when I mean untoward, I mean, white supremacist neo-Nazi tats. You should take them aside and ask them a few questions to find out what their intentions are. And that's just a start. So maybe social media posts. None of them seem to be very bright. Of course, the ones I'm really afraid of are the ones that we haven't caught because they're not stupid. Those are the ones that I'm really concerned about. The ones making the pipe bombs. Now, I understand the FBI is not going to divulge where that investigation is going because they don't want to divulge what they know about who they know. I understand that. But it is a bit concerning that some military trained types are so willing to overthrow our government. No wonder the founder said, a standing army might be a mistake. And where did these guys get their training? In a standing army. So I'd like to know where they got radicalized and what we can do to de-radicalize it. Well, I have a suspicion that they began to get radicalized by right-wing talk radio and Fox and all the other underbellies of, underbellies? The underbelly of the right. Maybe they got radicalized by the influx of untraceable campaign cash from dark corporations, and they don't necessarily have to be foreign. Not necessarily. So, it looks like some foreign money came in to finance the insurrection on January 6th. The secession movement out here in the West has been funded by Russia. How do we know that? Because people packed their bags and got out of here and moved back to Russia. That's how we know. And why would they do that? To divide America, literally divide America. And look where we are now. We have to look at our neighbors with their Trump flags thinking, are they going to kill me? Do they think that they have to kill me to get their way? On the other hand, I think people are waking up to the fact that this is not fun and games. This is real. Maybe they're realizing that they're all the people that they condemned in the past, susceptible to media manipulation because of, I don't know, their lack of civics education. Now we're hearing that we have to have civics education. Nikki Haley is out there blaming January 6th on a lack of civics education. Well, yeah, I've only been saying that since, the 70s. Right around Jimmy Carter, the Republicans said, we're not going to let these kids learn about American civics. Look what happened before. They impeached Nixon for being a crook. We can't let that happen again. Well, reap what you sow. I've been complaining about the lack of civics education. It should be required. You should know something about the country you're trying to overthrow, you would think. I really will repeat, that is probably what makes me the most angry. If you're going to overthrow something, you should know at least something about what you're overthrowing. It just seems intellectually correct now, doesn't it? But intellectually correct has nothing to do with the maggot mind. We know how it works. So on the Tim Cormall show, which I was so happy to be a part of again, especially in these times of woe, I mentioned that, it wasn't the toothless, unemployed meth crackhead. Crack? Meth? The meth head mostly. Who, lives out in the boonies in a trailer that is the base of Donald Trump. It is the Burgermeisters. It's the bourgeoisie. It's the small business owner. It's the real estate broker. It's any number. It's the cop. Well, they're people of means, okay? They're able to buy these big old monster trucks and boats. They can buy boats for a boat parade. These aren't economically anxiety people, except their economic anxiety is exactly what we know it is, and it's racism. They're perfectly fine with our white nationalist society because apparently that makes money. It's true. You look at right-wing media, then you look at the rest. Who's making the money? Right wing. Darn. I just wish I could suspend my ethics just for a moment to make some big bucks. They keep saying that Soros is funding us. Well, I wish he would. Now, that's not to belittle the people that have been helping us get along here in these almost 10 years, but still. You look at like a little snot like Ben Shapiro. Or any number of these, even O'Keefe and his Project Veritas. I mean, look at the empire he's built on lies, intimidation, and blackmail. Damn. I guess I just don't know what it is to be a real American now, do I? Well, actually, all kidding aside, we're going to wrest control of America from these crooks, these charlatans, these warlords. I've been talking about a reckoning. You can't have truth and reconciliation and accountability without a reckoning. People need to be confronted, and I actually do have hope because the turnout for the state protests were woefully low for that side, of course, because I think people don't want to be associated with a insurrection and an insurgency. Maybe they're thinking, I don't know what they're thinking. Maybe it's all a transactional tactical strategy. I know that's fairly redundant. But it's early in the morning for me. That they may be laying low just because it's strategically beneficial to do so. That may be the case. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of shame out there. I don't want to rub their faces in it like they would like to rub our faces in it, but maybe people need to be shamed and driven into the nether shadows where they belong, and suppress that racism, and suppress that misogyny, and suppress that homophobia, etc., etc., etc. You want to be in polite society? Stop making up stories to justify overthrowing the government. Democratic leaders are pedophile cannibals? Get out of here. Jeez. We're pilloried for saying that the Koch brothers and their deep money pockets, and the Petersons and the Welches and any number of these deep-pocketed billionaires are funding right-wing causes. I mean, we can only prove it. Okay, I'm not talking about making it up. I'm talking about actual court filings and tax filings, etc., etc., etc. But we're pilloried for bringing that up because that's some sort of like liberal conspiracy. They always bring up the Koch brothers. Well, bringing up the Koch brothers isn't an anti-Semitic trope either, is it? I have to say, when the right wing brings up Soros or, all the old tropes of anti-Semitism, the bankers. Yeah, the bankers are going to do it. Speaking of banks, I hope Deutsche Bank starts foreclosing on Trump's properties. Apparently, he owes them a lot of money on some guaranteed loans. Now, I heard that they were doing it, but that was just a speculation of what they could do, so I apologize. It's confirmation bias, but I really want him to do it. Come on, Deutsche Bank, step up. If you're going to be loaning to mobsters, you got to be able to, break a few legs to get your way. Jeez. Okay. Do they start work at like 10 in the morning and quit at 3? Like old bankers' hours? I bet people don't remember that. Maybe a few of us do. But there's a whole generations of people who don't know about banker hours. Yeah. They used to be so entitled. What's on the rest of the menu here on this Monday, right before the inauguration? Before I go on, I will mention one other thing about the vetting of the National Guardsmen. I've been warning for weeks that I fear an Anwar Sadat situation. You don't know what the Anwar Sadat situation was? You can look it up. But he was assassinated by military who were supposed to be protecting him during a military parade. With not only guns but cannon fire too. That's always nice. Okay. So it's not to take out the head of government so that the next in line will come up, because the next in line got blasted too. No, it's a wholesale takeover coup, a real coup. I've been fearing that for a while. And I've been seeing a lot of Blue Lives Matter flags on packs in the National Guard. How is that allowed? Is that military issue? I don't care if there's some sort of citizen soldier on the weekends. But anyway, the FBI's got to vet them. I hope they get rooted out. Oh, I will say another heartening aspect to all of this is that there's a lot of cops and military that are getting busted by the FBI, and you know why? Because other cops and other military are turning them in. because people are tired of this BS. This is America. We don't want Nazis taking over America. Well, any more than they already have. What's on the rest of the menu? Well, the FBI arrested the Cowboys for Trump leader over his actions at and after the Capitol riot. Yeah, he threatened to bring guns to the inauguration. Well, yeah, he's smart. GitHub apologized for firing a Jewish employee who warned of Nazis in the Capitol during the January 6th insurrection. He was just reporting facts. But fortunately, he got his job back, and they fired the human resource officer. Good. And most of the nation's Republican state attorneys general may have undermined their office's long-held special status in federal courts. Yeah, take part in an insurrection. That's not going to fare well in the judiciary. Already it hasn't. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where gunmen killed 2 female Supreme Court judges in Afghanistan. And the top rival to Netanyahu is getting some help from the Lincoln Project ahead of the Israeli March 23rd elections. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing that and everything else that she does. Thanks, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution allows us to pay our bills, fly under the radar, fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, so many years ago, and really continue resisting, because we need to resist still. We have to be resistance radio, darn it. They forced us into it, and we're not going to stop, because rust and Nazism never sleeps. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, well, that helps us pay our bills, because we stretch those dollars beyond compare. And we have a lot of practice. We really do. So thank you for that consideration, and thank you to those who have been so very generous. I cannot tell you how much it's helped and continues to help. Thank you very much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a whole lot more. Thanks, Tom. I take care of me. I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and follow me there, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that posted up on Twitter and other social media platforms, and you know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and do please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by, anonymous staff, because they're staff. A New Mexico County official and founder of the group Cowboys for Trump, who had vowed to return to Washington, D.C. after last week's riot at the Capitol to place a flag on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's desk, has been arrested by the FBI, and they arrested him on Sunday. That was yesterday. Otero County Commissioner Coy Griffin was arrested on charges of illegally entering the U.S. Capitol. According to court documents, Griffin told investigators that he was caught up in the crowd. Yeah, caught up. Why were you there? Which pushed its way through the barricades and entered the restricted area of the U.S. Capitol. But he said he did not enter the building and instead remained on the U.S. Capitol steps. A video posted to Griffin's personal Facebook page shows Griffin in the restricted areas, according to the affidavit submitted by the FBI. Griffin did not immediately respond to phone or text messages seeking comment because I think, when the FBI is after your ass, it doesn't matter who you are. Even if you're Roger Stone. We'll get to you, buddy. We will. On Thursday, Griffin said he planned to travel with firearms to D.C. for Biden's inauguration. I'm going to be there on January 20th. I'm going to take a stand for our country and our freedoms, Griffin said during a meeting of the Otero County Board of Commissioners. That was very white of him now, isn't it? I'm going to leave either here tonight or tomorrow. I've got a .357 Henry Big Boy rifle lever action that I've got in the trunk of my car. And I've got a .357 single action revolver. The Colt Ruger Vaquero that I'll have underneath the front seat on my right side, and I will embrace my Second Amendment, he said. And now he's in jail. I wonder if it's too late to embrace your Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself. Is it too late? Hard-working anonymous staff, this time at Reuters, bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Technology company GitHub has apologized for firing a Jewish employee who cautioned his colleagues about the presence of Nazis in Washington, D.C. on the day of the assault of the U.S. Capitol earlier this month, TechCrunch reported. After a probe found significant errors of judgment and procedure in the termination of the employee, GitHub's head of human resources resigned. Oh, they did. GitHub Chief Operating Officer Erica Brescia said yesterday, Sunday, in light of these findings, we immediately reversed the decision to separate with the employee and are in communication with his representative. Oh, you mean he has a lawyer? And she said in a blog post, adding that the company apologized to that employee. GitHub, which is based in San Francisco, fired the unnamed employee on January 8, but later engaged an outside investigator to conduct a probe after other employees complained about the action. The company has employees across the country, including the Washington, D.C. area. The blog did not mention the names of the HR head or the employee. TechCrunch reported the employee was Jewish and that he was fired after he made a comment on January 6 saying, "Stay safe, homies. Nazis are about." It's just reporting facts. The January 6 assault in Washington left 5 people dead as Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building trying to halt the certification by Congress of President-elect Joe Biden's election win. A man wearing a Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt was among those arrested. What is Auschwitz? Well, we all know, but Reuters deems it important to let us be reminded, and why don't we? That Auschwitz was a Nazi death camp where about 1.1 million people, most of them Jews, were killed in gas chambers and by other means during World War II. So they had a guy there wearing Camp Auschwitz. Other people with T-shirts and sweatshirts that had the abbreviation for 6 million was not enough. meaning 6 million Jews genocided during World War II, was not enough. Trump, who has challenged the validity of Biden's victory without producing evidence, initially praised his supporters, but later condemned the violence, even though he said, "I love you." Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. By supporting efforts to overturn the results of the presidential election, most of the nation's Republican state attorneys general may have undermined their office's long-held special status in federal courts. In December, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed legal papers attempting to overturn the results of the election based on unfounded claims of election fraud in 4 states that voted for President-elect Joe Biden. The Republican attorneys general for 17 other states made legal filings supporting his effort, which was rejected by the Supreme Court. More recently, an association that is affiliated with their political arm, the Republican Attorneys General Association, became entangled in the January 6th rally by Donald Trump that preceded the violent insurrection against the U.S. Capitol. That group, the Rule of Law Defense Fund, helped pay for promotional efforts to get people to attend Trump's rally. The controversy prompted the AG Association's executive director, Adam Piper, to resign. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, a Democrat, blasted the Republican attorneys general who have continued to support Trump's attempts to overturn the election, even as he and his allies have lost case after case in court. Even Trump's former U.S. Attorney General, William Barr, said the Justice Department had found no evidence of widespread fraud that would have altered the outcome of the presidential election because all they could find was 4 or 5 people who voted for Trump illegally. Some legal experts think the overt political involvement by the Republican attorneys general could have a lasting effect on how judges view legal actions their offices bring. States occupy a unique position and an important position in the court, said Paul Nolet, a Marquette University political scientist who studies attorneys general. If it turns out that AGs are no different from another politician or another interest group just looking for an angle trying to get into the courts could revisit special solicitude. That term refers to a state's ability to unilaterally weigh in on any federal lawsuit, giving attorneys general in their states a say in a wide variety of issues. Attorneys general are elected to office in most states and frequently use the job as a platform to run for governor or the U.S. Senate. Their offices serve as the legal arm of state governments, and they often band together, almost always with AGs of their own party, to challenge federal policy. I see where this is going. The courts won't allow any AG to bring a case because the Republicans destroyed solicitude, so the Democrats have to suffer it too. Most attorneys general also are the top law enforcement officers in their state, prosecuting criminal cases and upholding justice. Jeff Zeller, a Republican and former An Indiana Attorney General said attorneys general could lose the right to file friend of the court briefs in any federal case without permission because the activities of the Republican AGs in support of Trump's election claims. But he said, the work of prosecuting crimes and protecting consumers is handled mostly by career government lawyers who are not focused on political cases. The Republican Attorneys General Association and its counterpart group for Democrats launched 2 decades ago. The groups are major independent spenders in AG races, pouring money, much of it raised from corporations, into ads attacking the other side. In the last decade, the groups ditched their old agreement not to try to oust incumbents. The Republican group has spent $15 million and then contributed another $50 million to other political entities over the last decade, according to data compiled by the National Institute on Money and Politics. The Democratic group has spent less, but has recently closed the gap. But I think they've spent considerably less, and when they say close the gap, it hasn't been closed that much. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, A Soulful Offering. Pixar movies are known to appeal to adults and kids alike, often tackling themes that most kids' movies don't. The studio's latest, Soul, is its most mature film yet, addressing philosophical questions like why am I here and what's the purpose of life, as well as what it means to have a worthwhile life. With the lead voiced by Oscar winner Jamie Foxx, Soul tells the tale of Joe, a New York jazz pianist who makes ends meet as a middle school band teacher but longs to be a professional musician. His mother, voiced by Felicia Rashad, pressures her son towards the stability of a job with benefits, but a chance encounter leads to an opportunity for him to play with legendary saxophonist Dorothea Williams, Angela Bassett, reviving his aspirations. However, before Joe's dream can materialize, he has an accident and realizes his time is up. While waiting in line for heaven, Joe discovers he can get back to Earth by mentoring a rebellious soul named 22, voiced by Tina Fey, who has resisted becoming corporeal because she doesn't really see the point of it. If ever there was an opening, yeah, but pretty deep for kids. However, there is still kid appeal here due to the film's humor, visuals, and jazz soundtrack. Part of the comedy is the character Moonwind, voiced by British TV personality Graham Norton, who plays a hippie and while sending up new agey types, guides Joe and 22 on Earth as they explore the meaning of happiness in a manner sophisticated enough to belie the film's mega studio origins. Watching Soul may make you question what you'd do if focusing on a brief and finite time remaining on Earth. One thing is clear, though. Spending 100 or so minutes watching this film won't be something you'll regret. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman.
And they'll basically crush or pop the head off of any worker who tries to attack them.
If you're a honeybee, a hornet attack could be the last thing you ever experience. It's a gory, violent process, and honeybees have had to adapt to stay alive. You've probably heard of those murder hornets that recently turned up in North America. This is not a story about those. This research takes us east to meet their cousins. Wellesley College biologist Heather Madela went to Vietnam to understand how Asian honeybees defend themselves from the hornets there.
And in Vietnam, that's the giant hornet, Vespa.
Typically, when a hornet invades an Asian honeybee hive, hundreds of bees surround the intruder and create what's called a heat ball. With the hornet caught in the center, the heat goes up and the oxygen goes down. The bees literally cook and choke the hornet to death. But Vespa has figured out a way to avoid this trap.
Giant hornets will hunt honeybees on their own and grab them one by one. But what is really lethal to honeybees is when they flip into a multiple hornet attack strategy. And when they do this, they essentially want to kill all the adult defenders so that the colony is no longer protected.
But in the face of this deadly bum rush, Asian honeybees have resorted to the scatological.
And a lot of the beekeepers hadn't noticed them, or if they had, they didn't know what they were. But there was a handful of beekeepers who had seen these spots.
Those spots, it turned out, were poop. The hive's decision to dip into the dung pile didn't come lightly, though. The alternative to covering their house in was annihilation of the colony in the face of an overwhelming giant hornet invasion.
And then at a certain point, the workers in the colony decide it's a lost cause and they'll abandon ship and everyone will leave. And that leaves the entire colony undefended. So at that point, the hornets can successfully, without any interference, break into the nest and occupy it. And when they take over a nest, what they do is ferry the bee larvae inside back to their own hornet larvae so that they can eat them.
One beekeeper told Madela and her colleagues that he had seen the honeybees collecting bits of water buffalo dung. He thought that might explain the spots. He thought the bees might be using the dung to keep the hornets away.
We confirmed that bees actually forage on dung, which is a surprise in itself.
Honeybees generally keep their nests clean and tidy. They're good at keeping diseases and pathogens out. Two things that could be hiding in animal poop.
And the thought of them collecting feces in the field and intentionally bringing it back home was pretty stunning.
Whenever they detected a giant hornet nearby, but not other smaller hornets, the honeybees began to arrange bits of mammal or bird dung near the entrances to their hives. And the hornets themselves were less likely to land on a nest adorned with poop. If they did bother to land, they spent 94% less time attempting to break in. The study was published in the December 9 issue of the journal PLOS One. The researchers say this is the first time honeybees have ever been documented collecting non-plant matter. And because the bees are selective in what kind of poop they collect, and use it in a very specific way, they say it actually qualifies as tool use, the first known instance in wild bees. It isn't clear why or how the poop shield works. But Madela suspects that there must be some chemical inside the poop, presumably derived from the plants that the animals originally ate, that either actively repels the hornets or camouflages the scent of the bees' nests. American bees don't do this. Asian honeybees are a different species than the Western honeybees in Europe and North America.
I just can't even totally capture how much fun it really was to do this work. I didn't have a lot of personal experience with Asian bees, and so meeting them was kind of like meeting the crazy cousin of the bees you know really well. These bees are a lot smaller, but they're very, very fast and very reactive. And that's because of the kind of hornet pressure that they've evolved under. They have evolved to fly quite quickly in zigzagging patterns as they're approaching their nest so that they're very hard to catch.
Western honeybees did not evolve alongside hornets, as did their Asian cousins, which makes them especially susceptible to hornet attacks in places where giant hornets become introduced. If Madela and her team can figure out how poop keeps hornets away, it might help North American beekeepers help their bees to survive, if the so-called murder hornets decide they like it here. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, Colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Here are some constitutional provisions that could well apply to the recent storming of the Capitol. I'm Bill Newman. On January 6th, insurrectionists carrying out the wishes of President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol to prevent the Congress from confirming the Electoral College vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The mob overpowered the Capitol Police, smashed windows, ransacked offices, carried the Confederate flag, and desecrated that historic building, brought nooses, handcuffs, and explosives inside, and built a scaffold with a noose outside. Some were screaming, "Hang Pence!" 6 people died, including 2 police officers. The Constitution contains 2 remedies for aiding and abetting an insurrection. The 14th Amendment, in relevant part, says, "No person shall hold any office under the United States who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof." The Constitution also provides for impeachment of the president for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, with only 2 potential punishments after conviction by the Senate: removal from office and disqualification to hold any future office. But that's not the end of the story, because the Constitution also says that, quote, "the party convicted by the Senate and punished shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
The ransacking and terrorizing of Congress by violent trumpeters is an outrage, right? Even Republican congressional leaders have rushed to assail the mob invasion, calling it a desecration of America's democratic ideals. For example, the GOP Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, denounced the invading outsiders as thugs, lecturing that self-government, quote, "requires a shared commitment to truth and shared respect for the ground rules of our system." But wait, what about the insider mob? The lawmakers who routinely run roughshod over our ideals of equality and justice. So many of the pious members who are now so prissily crying out for decorum and respect for the process openly solicit special interest cash to do favors for the donors, while ignoring the basic needs of workaday people they supposedly represent. Excuse me, Mitch, but for the past 4 years, weren't you Trump's most destructive Machiavellian monkey wrencher in Congress? Yes, you were, relentlessly stomping on truth and rigging legislative ground rules to ram his plutocratic, autocratic agenda into law. You even stoked his depraved narcissism. For weeks after it was clear that Joe Biden had won the presidency, you cynically fed Trump's fantasy that he had won, helping spread a furious disunity across America. The mob that you deplore for rampaging into your inner sanctum of power and privilege is of your own making. They're your angry political chickens coming home to roost. It's a scream and a disgrace to see not only McConnell but also self-aggrandizing icks like Ted Cruz now posing as righteous statesmen. Cruz unctuously proclaimed, "We must come together and put this anger and division behind us." This is Jim Hightower saying, so let's also shine the light of justice on the mob of insider elites who so selfishly continue desecrating American democracy.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day the United States Supreme Court decided the case Moyers versus Peabody. The case grew out of the Colorado Labor Wars, a series of back-to-back strikes in 1903 and 1904 in the precious metals mines and ore mills. The Colorado National Guard meted out violent assaults, arrests, and deportations against strikers, often on orders from Colorado Governor James Peabody. The state militia routinely rounded up strikers and union leaders, detained them for weeks in bullpens, and ignored their habeas corpus petitions. Western Federation of Miners President Charles Moyer arrived in Telluride during a strike to find these repressive conditions. He signed a poster that read, "Is Colorado in America?" The poster included an image listing the many violations of basic democratic rights on the American flag. Moyer was arrested in March of 1904 for desecration of the American flag on the poster. He was detained on the grounds of military necessity, even after the courts ordered his release. His case traveled through the state and federal courts until the Supreme Court ruled. They held that the governor and officers of a state National Guard, acting in good faith and under authority of law, may imprison without probable cause a citizen of the United States in times of insurrection and deny that citizen the right of habeas corpus. The ruling radicalized the labor movement. Many concluded there could be no justice through the court system. A later case successfully challenged the ruling on the basis that the claims of insurrection were subject to judicial review. The ruling, however controversial, still stands today and was invoked after 9/11 in the 2004 ruling Hamdi versus Rumsfeld. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 43 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a bit warmer than yesterday. And it's still going to be a tad chilly, only about 53 or so. Overnight lows in the mid to low 30s, and we are expecting some snow on Friday. And then piling up snow over the weekend. We'll see how that turns out, though. Looks like we will have some clouds this morning, which will give way to generally sunny skies in the afternoon, winds light and variable. Clear skies overnight, lows, as I mentioned, in the mid to low 30s. Sunshine tomorrow, high remaining the same, around 53. Winds light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stand at 6,806. That has increased since Friday, though once again not the complete total. We'll have the complete weekend total later on today, and we'll update tomorrow. Confirmed deceased have risen to 82, and as the trend has been going, it should rise when we get the updated totals later on today. Pollen right now outside the window here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 21 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.38 inches. We are in a dense fog advisory until about noon, and visibility is at 1/4 mile, with relative humidity at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 44 and partly cloudy. Paris is 45 and partly cloudy. Rome is 53 and sunny. Kyiv is 6 degrees and cloudy. And that sounds freezing to me. Kabul is 41 and fair. Hong Kong is 50 and clear. Tokyo is 42 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 72 and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and sunny. And New York is a crisp 40 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Abdul Qadir Siddiqui of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Unidentified gunmen killed 2 female judges from Afghanistan's Supreme Court yesterday morning, adding to a wave of assassinations in Kabul and other cities, while government and Taliban representatives have been holding peace talks in Qatar. The 2 judges, who have not yet been named, were killed and their driver wounded in an attack at around 8:30 local time, and the police adding that the case was being investigated by security forces. A spokesman for the Taliban said its fighters were not involved.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Laurie Kellman of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Israel's top rival to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is getting some American help ahead of the March 23rd elections. Gideon Sa'ar, a one-time Netanyahu protege, has hired 4 of the founders of the Lincoln Project, which ran a relentless campaign to help defeat Donald Trump. The hiring was first reported by Israel's Channel 12 TV and confirmed by a member of Sa'ar's campaign. The campaign official spoke on condition that you don't name him because he was discussing internal strategy. Oh, really? Lincoln Project founders Steve Schmidt, Rick Wilson, Stuart Stevens, and Reed Galen were among the leaders of the effort to draw Republicans from Trump's re-election effort centered on the president's ethics and moral leadership. The Lincoln Project's stated mission is to hold public leaders accountable. That is similar to Sa'ar's message as head of the New Hope Party, the faction he founded when he broke away from Likud. He accuses Netanyahu of turning the Likud into a tool for personal survival at a time when he is on trial on corruption charges. Sounds so familiar, doesn't it? Indeed. Well, good luck, guys. And I still have to say, I don't trust never-Trumpers and never will. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.